Good morning. It is a beautiful morning here at the Proton Center of Excellence, and behind me is the 2022 Proton X70. Now, as you know, Proton has sought to update this model with a few aesthetic changes, but most importantly, there is a big change under the bonnet. There is no longer the 1.8 TGDi model, but there is now a 1.5 litre TGDi, the same engine as used in the Proton X50 and built in Tanjung Malim. So Proton has organized a drive for us to sample this car and, of course, this engine to see what's what. My name is AIMAN ABDULLAH, this is Malaysian Motoring. This is our very quick media drive of the new 2022 Proton X70. So this is actually our first time at taking a Proton X70 out on a longer drive, and for the most part it is quite pleasant. Now the 1.8 litre TGDi engine, which has been swapped out on the majority of the range for this second minor change, was known to be a very smooth machine, and it would be more than adequate to hurtle the car along at highway speeds or even a little bit further than that, but fuel consumption was not really its strongest suit. Now, Proton says that the majority of the changes to this car were made to improve efficiency, starting with the smaller engine. So the big question is, although fuel efficiency may have been improved, are there any deficits? Are there any prices that had to be paid as a result? Well, number one, for this second minor change, prices are up ever so slightly across the board. But the executive all-wheel drive variant is back, apparently from strong demand coming from East Malaysia. Secondly, this 1.5 litre engine does have a slight performance deficit. So it has a little bit less power and it has about 50 Newton meters less torque. The latter figure is more important here because the Proton X70 is not exactly a light SUV. And as a result, a reduction in torque could result in a pretty significant impact in terms of how the car drives. Now, as we shuttle along with adaptive cruise control going and braking, one thing to note is that refinement has not taken a hit with this swap. The engine remains very muted, and for the most part it is very smooth. You only feel a 3-cylinder rattle on very, very heavy acceleration or when you're just sort of moving off from a standstill. When you are idling, however, the car remains very composed and very quiet, which is quite impressive given the fact that this same engine in the X50 doesn't quite offer that same sense of isolation. Now, isolation is the name of the game with the X70. When it first arrived, even as a CBU model, we remarked just how quiet the car was and just how well it would travel along at speed, and that hasn't changed here. Even driving at a speed that would most probably get me in trouble, there is really not that much road roar and there is really not that much wind noise. So much so that I can still converse with passengers in the back without having to raise my voice. Could it be improved? Sure, but for the prices that you're paying, the level of isolation and refinement that you're getting from this car is still very good, which means Proton continues to nail the value aspect in this car. Now, we did manage to drive this car on some slightly twisty B roads earlier, and unfortunately, Proton ride and handling, which was one of its most famous and most valuable traits for a very long time, continues to not be present in this car. The priority for the X70 is to be comfortable, and that is what this car excels at very well. You can drive along on motorways and go through the worst lumps and bumps that the world can throw at you, and the car remains very composed and very comfortable with very little intrusion in terms of terrible road surfacing. However, when you attack a back road the way most Proton drivers do, for better or worse, it doesn't reward you the way Proton's indigenous models do. The Proton Iris and Proton Persona continue to be one of the best handling cars in their segments, if not the best, full stop. And the X70 still doesn't have that same level of joy behind the wheel. The steering wheel remains very numb, although it's quite predictable and you can place the car on the road rather well, but there's no joy. And in terms of the gearbox, when you're driving regularly on motorways or in traffic, it is fine. But when you're driving spiritedly, it does respond rather slowly. This cannot be remedied by putting it into manual mode because between input and reaction, there is a measurable amount of time, measurable with fingers, not just, you know, specialist timing gear. So in short, this is not a car for spirited drivers, and it never was, and I guess that just continues. As far as I'm concerned, it's not really a detraction, because PROTON X70 buyers like the comfort, they like the isolation, and they like the refinement. They understand the character that this car comes with, and they're okay with it. So this car is not a jack of all trades because it was never really meant to be. But overall, I can say with confidence that this 1.5 litre TGDi engine does not come at a cost for this car. Now, I've still got another 64 kilometers to go to my next checkpoint, and I guess I'll catch up with you a little bit later. So what can we glean from this drive? Well, the 1.5 litre engine certainly is no detraction from the experience of the PROTON X70. Buyers concerned with how this engine will perform should have no concerns at all, because despite the slight reduction in horsepower and the slight reduction in torque, the engine continues to perform as well as it always did in the X50, and it will continue to do very well in the X70. Fuel consumption could have been improved, but it is what it is, and ultimately for the price you're paying, the X70 continues to be an incredibly excellent value proposition, and we look forward to watching these cars continue to fly out of the showrooms. In any case, thank you very much for watching the video. If you enjoyed this, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel, hit the little bell icon so you're notified every time we make a new upload. Don't forget to follow us on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. All the links are in the description below. Thank you so much for watching. We'll catch you in the next one.